Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today, this is going to be fun. We're going to compare and contrast two of the most well-known and iconic images in Western art and science.
I can't wait.
Yeah, so first you've got the Flammarion engraving with, the one, right? The
Yeah.
medieval guy peering through the edge of the sky, and there's like stars and gears. It's
Right.
just so cool.
Yeah, and then you have Michelangelo's creation of Adam.
Maybe the most famous fresco in the entire world.
Oh, easily.
So we're going to be looking at these side by side. Now, the Flammarion engraving, for a long time, nobody actually knew where it came from.
Right, for years, nobody had any idea who made it or even when it was made. Some scholars thought it was medieval.
Medieval, yeah, I can totally see that.
Others thought, no, this has got to be from the Renaissance. But finally we tracked it down.
Okay, so tell me, where did it come from?
An 1888 book.
Oh, wow. So much for the medieval and Renaissance theories.
Right. It was in L'Atmosphère, Météorologie populaire, a book about meteorology by a French astronomer named Camille Flammarion.
Okay.
And get this, Flammarion himself was an engraver.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. So he may have created the engraving himself.
That's what some people think. But there is another scholar, Bruno Weber, who studied the engraving very, very carefully. And he says that the style of the engraving, especially the way the burin was used, points to a more 19th century origin.
So the burin, that's like the tool, right, that engravers use.
Exactly. It's like a chisel, but for engraving. And the way the burin was used in the Flammarion engraving, well, it looks more like how engravers worked in the 19th century.
Fascinating. So, okay, so we know when and roughly who, but what about the meaning behind the engraving? I mean, what was Flammarion trying to say?
Well, he included a caption with it. He wrote, "A missionary of the Middle Ages tells that he had found the point where the sky and the earth touch."
I love that. Okay, so immediately he's taking us back to this time when, like, people thought the sky was this solid thing, right? Like, you could just walk to the edge and, like, touch it.
Yeah.
And, Flammarion was an astronomer, so he knew that wasn't true. So he's using this image to show how, like, our understanding of the sky has changed over time.
That's exactly right. He's showing how we've moved from this idea of a solid sky to a vast, endless universe.
It's like he's saying, look how far we've come in our understanding.
Precisely.
Okay, but I'm going to throw this out there. Did Flammarion get the idea from somewhere else? Like, are there any older stories or images that are similar?
Ooh, good question. Actually, yeah. There are a few possibilities.
Like what?
Well, there's the legend of Saint Macarius. It's this medieval story about, get this, 3 monks who go on a journey to find the point where heaven and earth meet.
Oh, wow. So it's kind of like the pilgrim and the Flammarion engraving, right?
Exactly. Both of them are on this quest to understand, where we fit in.
Wow. So that's one possibility.
Yeah, and then there's another one from the 17th century. A writer named François de la Mothe Leveilleur, he wrote these letters, and in one of them he talks about this anchorite who reached the edge of the world, and he actually had to, like, bend over because the sky was touching the earth.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's another one.
Uh-huh.
Now, I remember reading about this ancient Greek guy. I think his name was Archytas. He had this argument for infinite space that really blew my mind.
Oh, yes, Archytas. His argument went something like this. Imagine you're at the edge of the universe, and you reach out your arm. Wouldn't there still be space beyond that point?
Yeah.
So how can there be an edge? How can the universe be finite?
It's like, bam, mind blown.
Right.
Okay, so we've got 3 possibilities. The legend of Saint Macarius, the letter by Leveilleur, and then Archytas's argument for infinite space. None of them perfectly match the Flammarion engraving, but
But they give us a sense of the intellectual world that Flammarion was living in. Like, these were the kinds of ideas that were floating around at the time.
I love that. It's like, even though we don't know for sure where he got the idea, we can see how these different threads of thought might have come together to create this incredibly powerful image.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the Flammarion engraving, but now I want to shift gears and talk about Michelangelo's creation of Adam.
Sounds good.
So, the creation of Adam, everybody's seen it, right?
Oh, yeah. I think it's one of the most reproduced images in history.
God reaching out to Adam, almost touching fingers, the spark of life about to pass between them. It's amazing.
It really is. And Michelangelo, what a genius. I mean, he knew how to use composition and, oh man, anatomy to convey some really complex theological ideas.
Yeah, you see that, right? Like, God is this powerful, dynamic figure, and
Adam's kind of like waking up, reaching out, but still kind of limp.
yeah, and that space between their fingers, it's electric.
It's like the potential for life, for consciousness is right there. And, Michelangelo was really into anatomy.
Oh, yeah, wasn't he, like, dissecting bodies and stuff?
Yeah, like Da Vinci, they were both fascinated by the human body.
So that's where all that incredible detail in his work comes from, huh?
Exactly. He knew the muscles, the bones, everything. And some people think he even snuck in some hidden anatomical knowledge in the creation of Adam.
Wait, really? Like what?
Well, look at the figures surrounding God. Some scholars think they're arranged to look like, get this, a human brain.
A brain. No way. Was that intentional?
It's hard to say for sure, but it is pretty suggestive, right? And it would make sense given Michelangelo's interest in anatomy. I mean, think about it. You have this scene of creation, this divine spark of life, and right there, nestled around God, is the organ that makes us human, the brain.
That's pretty wild. So maybe Michelangelo was trying to say something about the connection between, like, the divine and human consciousness.
It's definitely possible. It's one of those things that keeps art historians debating, which is part of the fun, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it makes you look at the fresco with new eyes. Okay, so we've got this mysterious engraving and this masterpiece of a fresco. They seem pretty different, but I feel like there are some connections between them. Like both of them are about exploring the unknown, right?
Absolutely. The Flammarion engraving, it's about physical exploration, pushing the boundaries of what we know about the universe.
Right. And the creation of Adam, it's like exploring the inner world, the mystery of consciousness. Where does that spark of life come from?
That's it. Two different kinds of exploration, but both driven by that same human desire to understand, to make sense of our place in the world, in the universe.
It's amazing how these two images can speak to each other across, what, centuries? And they do it visually, too, right? Like their styles are so different.
Yeah, the Flammarion engraving has this medieval, kind of mysterious feel. It's like it's from a different time.
Exactly. And the creation of Adam, it's the high Renaissance.
All about celebrating the beauty and power of the human form, the divine made flesh. It's really something to see it in person, you know? The scale, the colors, it just blows you away.
I can only imagine. So, okay, we've talked about the creation of these images, their meaning, their connections. But I'm curious, why do you think they've become so iconic? I mean, they're everywhere, right? T-shirts, posters, memes, you name it.
Well, I think it's because they tap into something universal, something about the human experience, that desire to explore, to understand, to connect with something bigger than ourselves. And they do it in a way that's visually striking, memorable. They stay with you.
And they become symbols, right? Like the Flammarion engraving is often used to represent science, exploration, breaking through boundaries.
Exactly. And the creation of Adam, it's practically synonymous with creation itself. It's just so powerful. And the fact that they've been reinterpreted and parodied over the years, that just shows how deeply they've seeped into our culture.
Yeah. It makes you wonder what images from our time will be considered iconic in the future. You know, what will be our legacy? Will it be a photo from the James Webb Space Telescope?
Or maybe some kind of visualization of the human genome, something that really captures the spirit of our age.
Or maybe it'll be something totally unexpected, something we can't even imagine yet.
I like that sense of possibility, you know, that there's still so much out there to discover, to create.
Okay, so we've gone pretty deep on these two images. What are some things that you hope our listeners take away from this deep dive?
Well, first of all, I hope they've seen these images in a new light. Like, there's always more to uncover, more to think about, even with images that are so familiar. And secondly, I hope they're inspired to do their own exploring, whether it's art, science, history, whatever. Just keep asking questions, keep digging deeper.
I love that. It's all about that journey of discovery, right?
Right. And who knows, maybe our listeners will create the next iconic image that captures the imagination of the world.
That's a great thought to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another exploration of a fascinating world of art, science, and history. So we spent quite a bit of time with Flammarion engraving and the creation of Adam. It's been pretty amazing, right?
I love how, like, these two images can be so different but still kind of speak to each other.
Exactly. Like one's a medieval-looking engraving, the other's a high Renaissance masterpiece. But they both deal with this idea of like the human search for knowledge and meaning.
Absolutely. And they both kind of challenge us to think beyond what we know, you know, to push those boundaries.
Yeah, I love that. So as we're wrapping up, what are some things that you hope our listeners will take away from this deep dive?
Well, first of all, I hope then realize that even with images that are super familiar, like these two, there's always more to see, more to understand. It's like peeling back the ears of an onion.
I like that analogy. So yeah, don't just take things at face value. Keep digging deeper.
Exactly. And I also hope this deep dive has kind of like rekindled that sense of curiosity in our listeners.
Ooh, yeah. Like we were talking about all these different kinds of exploration, right?
Yeah, whether it's exploring the universe with a telescope or like In the creation of Adam, exploring like the inner world of the human mind.
Yeah, it's all about that journey of discovery, right?
Absolutely. And I hope our listeners will feel inspired to go on their own journeys, to find their own things that make them go, wow.
That's a great point. And, thinking about these two images, they kind of represent two different paths to knowledge, right? Like the pilgrim in the Flammarion engraving. He's all about physical exploration, venturing out into the unknown.
Yeah, and then Adam, in the creation of Adam, he's kind of like waking up to his own existence, like discovering consciousness itself.
Yeah, it's like one is about exploring the outer world, the other the inner world, but maybe ultimately those two paths lead to the same place.
Ooh, I like that. Like maybe understanding the universe and understanding ourselves are kind of like two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. Wow, that's a great thought. So, to our listeners, what are you curious about? What mysteries are you trying to unravel? What journeys are you taking? Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and maybe, just maybe, you'll create the next iconic image that captures the imagination of the world. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.